Professor McGavin, you're an expert in arthropods. Could you start by telling us what arthropods are?
Well, arthropods are this really enormous group of animals. I mean, they're much bigger than any other animal group on Earth. They comprise about, three-quarters of all animals. And they're the animals that have lots of hinged legs. So crustacea, spider, insects, that sort of thing. Hard outsides, lots of hinged legs.
And what is it about them that interests you?
Arthropods have got to interest everybody because they are, to all intents and purposes, the major animal group on Earth. So if you call yourself a zoologist and you don't know anything about arthropods, you really don't know anything about anything because they are the majority. Everybody gets very excited about backboned animals, things with a spine. Bats, cats, rats, mammals, amphibians, fish, birds. They only comprise 2.9% of all species, whereas arthropods comprise about 66% of all species. So, in terms of species, they are immensely important. In terms of what they do, they are immensely important.
Were you interested in them right from the start, from when you were a child?
When I was very young, I knew that the natural world was the most interesting thing around. So I wanted to be outside, and you don't have to be outside very long before you find, insects and spiders and things, doing interesting things. But I was interested more generally as a kid. It was only when I got to Edinburgh for my first degree that I realised that actually insects were the major player in any habitat. And we were on a field trip to the west coast of Scotland when all my classmates were looking for badgers and owls and eagles and failing to find them. But at our feet were hundreds of thousands of ants doing very interesting things. And I thought, well, surely this is easier to work on.
I understand that there are several species that are named after you. Could you tell us a bit about them?
One of the great things about being in a field for long enough is that people will eventually describe a new species and think, oh, what on earth am I going to call this? And normally they're named after the country or how they look or something like that. But 5 people around the world have named an insect in my honour and a spider, I think. So I have a plant hopper in Africa. I've got a shield bug from Borneo. I think an ant from Africa as well, a cockroach from Southeast Asia, which is great, and they have my name attached to them. What's making me slightly depressed is the fact that these things may not survive. Even though they've been named in my honour, we're losing species at a quite alarming rate now because of habitat loss. And the sad truth is that although we are pretty sure there are 8 million species of arthropods out there unknown, our chances of ever finding them and naming them are probably pretty slim because they will come and they will go without us ever knowing they were there.
Quite a lot of people have phobias of insects and spiders. Why do you think that is?
I sometimes wonder why people have a phobia. I mean, they say it's because they're unpredictable. They move in a strange way. They've got lots of legs. Well, I don't know. I think it's passed on. I think if you're a kid growing up, you have a fascination with the thing around, all the animals around you. And I think adults sometimes pass their fears on by going, oh, what's that? Oh, spider, In some parts of the world, it's perfectly justifiable to have a fear of spiders because there are many places in the world where, spiders can injure you severely, In the UK, however, there are no spiders which can injure you at all. You might get a slight irritation or, a swelling. But still, there are something like 7 million people in the United Kingdom who are terrified of spiders and moths.
Do you think it's possible for them to be cured of their phobia?
It is possible to train people out of fears by simply exposing them to something, or on a regular basis. And perhaps if they have a spider phobia, you start with a very small spider and you say, well, have it on your hand, look at it, examine it, it's fine. And I've actually cured a girl who had a spider phobia in a day, and by the end of the day she was able to hold a tarantula. And I think I think if people look at the natural world, if they look at insects or spiders and they understand them, then you begin to really enjoy them. But if you just cut yourself off, which is what most people do, they say, I'm going to have an insect-free zone around me. It's not possible.
I'm assuming you're not afraid of any insects or spiders, but have you ever been in a situation where you were genuinely frightened of an animal?
We were filming in the Amazon after dark, because it was a program about animals after dark, and I saw a head of a snake poking out from under a leaf. And of course I thought, well, this is great, quick, camera, come on, let's get down and have a look at this thing. I'm not stupid, so I got a stick and I lifted this leaf up gingerly, and of course it was a fer de lance, which is one of the most dangerous snakes in the whole of South America, responsible for more human deaths than probably any other snake. And as I lifted it up, it sort of looked at me, and they don't like head torches, so I'm wearing a head torch shining right in its face. It does this, and then I realized that it's 4 feet long. It's twice as long as my stick, which means that it could get me very easily indeed. So I just sort of froze. I could feel my heart pounding, and I just gingerly put the leaf down and said, we'll just leave this one, I think. That could have been very nasty.
Would you ever just kill an insect that was in your house?
Well, in my career, I have killed millions of insects as part of my work, because you have to collect them, because you can't name them or describe them or work on them unless you kill them. In my home, that's a different thing. If it's a bee that has come in by accident, or a wasp or something like that, I will catch it and outside it goes. Fleas, however, if you have a cat and you don't control the fleas, are a bit of a pest, and I will definitely get rid of the fleas.
Eating insects has recently become quite fashionable. Is it a realistic solution to the problem of world nutrition, or is it just a flash in the pan, for want of a better phrase?
I don't think it's a flash in the pan, because you can farm them in a very easy way, and as long as you can make the food available in a palatable form. I've eaten insects for years and years, fry them up and grind them into flour and make bread out of it. No, it isn't a flash in the pan. We will have to address this quite seriously in the next 100 or so years.
Why do we not eat insects in Europe?
In the West, we tend to not eat insects, and lots of people say it's because the insects are dirty or they look funny or whatever. It's actually not anything to do with those things. It's about ecology. It's about a thing called optimal foraging theory, which simply says if you use up more energy collecting food to feed yourself and your family than you get back from eating it, it won't happen. It's not a thing that will occur in that area of the world. So in the West, where it's cold and insects are relatively small, it's not a very sensible idea. However, in hot countries where insects are larger and swarm and can be collected very, very easily, and that's anywhere from Mexico, Japan, South America, any of these countries, it makes sense. It's very easy to harvest enough food in a relatively short time, half an hour, which will provide a sizable meal. And it's a thing that we've been doing as a species for 1 million years.
If you were trying to convert someone to insect eating, what would be the first thing you would cook them?
Well, you would have to make the food appealing and interesting and attractive. So I would start with a mealworm, snack. Roasted mealworms, awfully good.
How often do you cook insects?
As often as I can. I cook insects as often as I can. I like to open audiences' eyes to the possibility of eating insects. We eat prawns, we eat lots of things, snails. I mean, insects are essentially flying prawns. Okay, they tend to be smaller. But I had an audience once in Oxford of 200 8 to 12-year-olds, and at the end of my lecture, I cooked up a big wok of crickets, fried them up with some garlic, a bit of oil, salt and pepper, handed them round, and the kids went wild. They ate the whole lot. From the back of the audience came a mum with a face like thunder. She came down to the front of the auditorium and said, "My son's just eaten 6 crickets." I went, "Yeah, and your point is?" She was at home, he doesn't even eat broccoli. And I said, well, clearly it's the way you cook your broccoli. And the sad truth is that although we are pretty sure there are 8 million species of arthropods out there unknown, and I think adults sometimes pass their fears on by going, "Oh, what's that? Oh, it's a spider, But still, there are something like 7 million people in the United Kingdom who are terrified of spiders and moths. However, if you have a cat and you don't control the fleas, are a bit of a pest. No, it isn't a flash in the pan. We will have to address this quite seriously in the next 100 or so years. Lots of people say it's because the insects are dirty or they look funny or whatever. And the kids went wild. They ate the whole lot. I went, "Yeah, and your point is?" She was at home, he doesn't even eat broccoli.
Do you ever watch wildlife programmes on TV? Why do you think they're so popular?
I love wildlife programs, and when I see there's a new one coming on, I get really excited about where we might be going. It's almost like going on safari or going on a diving holiday or something like that. I think they're just so immersive, I guess, that you feel that you do feel that you're there somehow.
No, I think that's true. For me, I love that sort of technical bit. I love finding out the bit at the end, how they actually filmed it, and appreciating quite how difficult that it would have been.
Doesn't it?
Absolutely, to put something like that together, and the fact that it really is a serious expedition for many of these things. And so I think they kind of appeal to people of different ages and across the spectrum. My 8-year-old will want to watch it because he's fascinated by animals generally and wildlife. My 11-year-old, because he too loves that behind the cameras idea. And also sometimes there's a bit of There's about learning something and reconnecting us with nature, maybe.
I think that's true, yeah.
I know why they're popular. I don't tend to watch them that religiously, I suppose. If they're on, I'll put them on in the background, and like David Attenborough's voice is really relaxing, I think.
Maybe that's one of the reasons they're so popular. David Attenborough's voice is amazing, and he has this great way of just putting things across to us, doesn't he, in a way that we can all relate to, maybe?
I think they just keep getting better and better. That's the thing that you can see. You can watch something on a subject that you've seen before, and the next time they go there, the cameras are better, the techniques are better, and it's a whole new experience.
Absolutely.
And they're almost becoming more extreme as well, aren't they, with all the kind of different areas like the under the sea and then the jungle ones that you've mentioned. It's just there's so much variety, isn't there?
It's an adventure every time. You know, I love finding out the bit at the end, how they actually filmed it, and appreciating quite how difficult that it would have been.
Doesn't it?
And also sometimes there's about learning something and reconnecting us with nature, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe that's one of the reasons they're so popular. David Attenborough's voice is amazing, and he has this great way of just putting things across to us, doesn't he, in a way that we can all relate to, maybe?
Yeah. And they're almost becoming more extreme as well, aren't they, with all the kind of different areas. Like the under the sea and then the jungle ones that you've mentioned. It's just there's so much variety, isn't there?